The Mastercase H500M by Cooler Master sports dual 200mm addressable RGB fans, a USB 3.1 Gen 2 Type-C port, and 4 tempered glass side panels, both sides, top, and front, and the front can swap out for a mesh panel if you want maximum airflow. It has a plethora of cable routing covers to keep things tidy too, so click the sponsor link in the description to learn more.
Excellent!
Welcome everyone to part 4 of my Riptide build series. Riptide is my absolutely massive system, actually two systems. I'm building the Corsair 1000D case featuring the AMD 1950X Threadripper processor, and it's water cooled, hence the name Riptide. Also has a small system down there in the bottom, that's socket AM4 with an AMD 2400G processor that's going to be a FreeNAS build with 32 gigs of hard drive storage down there as well. There's a ton of stuff in this system, so if you haven't already, check out the initial build videos where I put it together, as well as one where I started to work on the water cooling stuff. It was just posted a few days ago. For today though, we are continuing that water cooling experience. We already have the blocks installed. Today we're going to be installing the pumps, as well as the reservoirs, as well as the tubing. And I am doing soft tubing for this build, supplemented by these little Alphacool quick release connectors, because I want this system to not just be a crazy over the top system with dual 1080 Ti's and everything, but I want it to be functional. I want to be able to take it apart when I need to. I want to be able to upgrade it if I need to, and I don't want to have to worry about completely disassembling a hardline water cooling loop if I'm doing that. Now there are still some decisions to be made today. The main ones are going to be how and where specifically am I going to be mounting my two D5 pumps, as well as these Alphacool reservoirs with the helix inserts. Also, should I go with both blue helix inserts, both white helix inserts, or one blue and one white? I will probably decide that one way or another by the end of this video, but if you're watching right now, go ahead and leave me a comment in the comments and let me know which of these color combinations for the helix inserts you prefer. For starters here, I am installing the Eisblock HDX-2 from Alphacool. This is an M.2 riser card, as already mentioned, and this is going to go in the lower system, the FreeNAS build. And I can't use the M.2 on the back of this board because of the CPU. I'm using the 2400G. So the HDX-2 is installed, and I'm liking how it looks. It matches very nice with the finish on the GPX-N coolers on the GPUs. And I also want to clarify something here. I mentioned this 120 gig Corsair MP500 SSD was going to be the boot drive. That's not true. I'm actually going to be using this as a cache drive. Under here is the Intel Optane 32 gig drive, and that is what I'm using as a boot drive. So 32 gig boot drive, 120 gig cache for the 32 terabyte 3.5 inch hard drive array. So at that point in the build where you just gotta kind of stare at it and try to figure out exactly what position, orientation, and direction the loop is gonna go. If I didn't already mention in this video, the top rad here is gonna be for the CPU, two front rads are gonna be for the graphics cards, and then I have two pumps and two reservoirs. So I need to position these all in here. The pumps are separate from the reservoirs, so I'm gonna need to have the reservoirs up and above them. And the reservoirs come with two different brackets here. This one's plastic and it can grip it in the middle, which is a little bit more flexible because you can move it up or down. I don't really like the finish on this though. It is just black plastic and it doesn't really match quite as nicely with the finish on the rest of the system in general. Now these are metal and they actually ship with brackets that are made to be able to mount on 120 or 140 millimeter fans. So if you already have a radiator set up, you can mount these on that, mount this to your radiator, and you're pretty much good to go. I could even mount one of these to the front rad, but I want them to be side by side there and look a little bit more symmetrical. So these actually just go on the top and bottom of each reservoir like that. And it does look like this bottom piece can be removed. So I'm gonna see if I can just take this little circular mount part, remove this larger bracket, and mount each one to the back to position them on that back wall, which should be easier on the right side because it's got all these cutouts for drilling through. On the left side, I have a bunch of grommets, so I might need to drill some holes there. We'll see how things line up. So here's where we're at right now. We spent a decent amount of time figuring out how to get these pumps mounted on this little bracket here. The bracket's convenient because with just a couple thumb screws right here, you can remove the whole thing. So the pumps should have been easy to mount to that because there's a bunch of rails down in here. However, they're all kind of offset and staggered, so I found that they were actually mounting and they'd be a little bit sideways. So eventually we tried different methods here, and then Joe suggested mounting one of the brackets on the back. So that's what we actually did. When they were side by side with the brackets on either one, they were pushing each other apart, and that wasn't working. So now we have just one on this side of this one, and then one on the back that's mounted to both of them. That is holding this whole unit together. And from there, it was just a matter of getting these reservoirs mounted up here. So right now, these are just held on by these two fittings right here, just little 90-degree rotaries. And we had a rough time kind of trying to figure out a mounting method for the top of it. There are these little brackets that come with it, and they have different mounting pieces on the back. We were trying to hack one of those together. We had various little things like this going on, and eventually it just really didn't work out. And I decided, you know what, even though these are slightly loose on the top, they're resting very well on the base down here. So I think it's gonna be okay. I'm gonna go without brackets on the top, and I'll just have fittings up there going off with tubing. So with those set up on there, it was time to figure out how my actual loop was going to go. So here's how it's going to go. The left pump here is going to be for the CPU. I'm going to go vertically up on this one with one of these quick disconnects, and actually need more of the little male-to-male fittings to actually connect this on. So I'm not going to be able to finish today. I have more of those in the mail though. So quick disconnect from there, and then the tubing is just going to go up to the pump, out from there and into the top reservoir, and I have a quick disconnect on that right there, so I'll be able to disconnect the CPU block if I want to. And then at the back here, I've got a couple fittings coming down, and this tubing is just going to go straight across here and then back into the reservoir for the pump down there. That's pretty much the whole loop. I will do one more quick disconnect back there, and I might tie it down somehow or figure out how I can get it to actually rest up there, but I'll figure that out in the future. And then for the second loop for the GPUs, the out is going to come out right here, and that's just gonna kind of loop down and hang down a little bit with a quick disconnect right there in the middle, then back up to the inlet there. That'll come out of that and across back to the inlet here, and then out of that, and then another kind of loop down here also into the first front reservoir, and then out of that and into it again, and then out of that and all the way up to the inlet on there, and then that is the second loop. So I got my soft tubing ready to go, and fortunately, even though I need more of those male-to-male fittings, I do have plenty of these, just little simple 90-degree ones. Actually, one of these boxes was all 90-degree fittings, and then one of them here is also all rotary 45s. Those are two very important types of fittings for this type of work. So I got my first tube installed. I'm happy about that. This is nice to have flexible tubing. It's a little bit easier to work with than the hardline stuff, but I'm actually kind of liking the blue, sort of frosty blue look of the tubing too. I think it'll look okay here, but I'm sure there'll be aesthetic opinions on that. Speaking of aesthetic opinions, I got lots of feedback on the brown Noctua fan that's on top of the NHL9A that's right there, so I've decided to upgrade that, or it's more of a side grade or maybe even slightly a downgrade when it comes to performance, but it's at least still a Noctua fan. This is the NFB9, and it's part of the Redux series, which means it is gray and darker gray, and it won't stand out like that brown fan. Noctua was nice enough to also include long mounting screws with the cooler, so I need to probably pull this whole thing out, and I've been dreading doing that because I'm going to need to probably even remove one of these graphics cards to do that. Nothing's actually plumbed up with tubing down here yet, so I need to do that probably sooner than later. Also, I've had the ECC memory 16 gig DIMMs arrive. I am not sure if this is actually going to work in ECC mode on this motherboard. It's kind of a shot in the dark, but I wanted to get something that I could test with, so that's a maybe. To preserve aesthetics for now, I'm going to stick with the Corsair kit that I have in there, because I have determined, even though it's not that easy, I can reach back here to unclip the memory, so I can swap that out even with stuff installed right there. So even though I'm excited to do some more tubing right now, I think I need to pull that out and get that fan swapped in first, and then I can proceed. So I managed to get the new fan swapped in. I only had to sort of slightly remove this power supply shroud slash motherboard tray at the bottom to get at that. And while I'm here, an important thing that I've realized as I've been looking at this whole system, the main system here is actually going to be off most of the time. I'm only going to turn that on for gaming and video editing. The lower system will be on all the time, however, and it has 4 8TB hard drives there at the front. I need to have some airflow in here when this main system is not connected. So I think I'm going to take just the fan sides of just a couple of the front intakes and then maybe one or even both of these rear exhausts here and connect it up to the mini ITX board. There's only 2 other fan headers on here though, and they're all tucked way back here, kind of the CPU's there, and then there's a couple case fan headers back there. So I'm going to use this little splitter, just a little PWM splitter, position it back behind the motherboard tray, and that way I'll have a much easier way of plugging in additional fans to make sure I get some airflow for the mini ITX system when the main rig is turned off. Well guys, I realized just a few minutes ago that I need to end this video. It is Saturday, it is once again getting incredibly hot in my garage, and I'm way past the point where I should have finished to this week's video. And I just realized, thanks to this reservoir right here, I guess both of them technically, I cannot continue right now without a few more pieces. Now I still haven't gotten the male-to-male extension bits that I need to finish off just a few of the connection points for some of the quick disconnects, but needless to say, there have been tons of things that have gone wrong during this video. There was the trouble with the mounting of the pumps. Fortunately, we were able to get around that. There was the trouble getting this down here. There was a bit that I didn't even show you with regards to the wire and cable management back here, with getting this out and put back in and lining up the actual screws on that screw back in. That was kind of a pain in the butt, but I was really excited to actually put water in at least one of the loops. I thought the CPU loop was going to be not too difficult, and after doing this first one, I was like, all right, quick run across the top to get over to the reservoir, and then just this little blooper right here, and then that will be one of the loops all done. But fortunately, I flipped the reservoir over and actually took a closer look at the bottom, which I hadn't really done yet, I guess, and realized there's 3 more outlets on the bottom, just like there's 3 inlets on the top. That means that all of these need caps. And all the caps I have add at least 1.5 millimeters or 2 millimeters of space. So that means that this can no longer sit flat on the pump right here. It also means that there's not enough clearance for this 90-degree bend at the top, which is kind of necessary. 90-degree bend at the top actually doesn't even have enough clearance even without that spacer there, so that's a problem in and of itself. But basically I don't have enough space for everything I need here. Now Dave showed me some flush caps that he had at Computex, and I don't know if that's a new product that's still in development or what, but I need to get some of those. I need to get a few other pieces still, it's obvious. So point being, I cannot finish for right now. The good news though is that at least the FreeNAS system down at the bottom is pretty much good to go, and I've even got the memory which I can swap in without too much difficulty. So I can get moving with a video on that. So I'm going to follow up this one with a video on that, and then I will have to do a part 5 of the build itself where I finish off the actual water cooling loop. So guys, thank you for bearing with me. I agree with all of you guys out there who are like, oh my gosh, that's cool, but it's so insane and so much work and so much trouble, and it's a stupid idea and Paul's stupid for doing it. I agree with you. You're totally right. But regardless, hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video, and I'll be back next week with more content. Thanks again for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.